So good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us for this presentation on our diagramming of execution groups. We'll just get started in about 30 seconds. So I've just put up a quick agenda. It should be hopefully a reasonably quick presentation this morning, as just covering a few additional features we've been adding recently. And those features are based around the execution group diagramming that we've added. So what we'll do is we'll just go through a little bit of history of where this approach is coming from, and then we'll get into the diagramming. So hopefully you would have all seen our Sonar plugin in action. So we look here for Message Broker. We can see our analysis running. Our analysis has been run on a particular project. So we can see here our metrics and issues, code violation, unit test coverage. We recently introduced unit test coverage, and unit test coverage is based on what's called a coverage file, and this is a standard coverage file. In this case here, this is coverage file, which has been generated by running our unit test in our local broker. I won't show you that now, but what this is just demonstrating is it's importing additional, or using the Sonar plugin to import additional information from the runtime, in this case coverage, that we can add or enhance our source code with to provide more information. So what we've taken is that approach, and we look to apply it to our execution groups. Now we do have actual checks and rules in our plugin to address how configuration and deployment is tied to the source code, or tied to our code, and with the intention of using these checks to prevent snowflake setup. So what we ideally would like to see developers doing is checking in code into their source code repository, configuring their Ant script, for example, to automatically deploy things to their broker environment, and then running that Ant script at deployment time to make sure that you get a consistent deployment each and every time. Now, I've had a little bit of feedback about that approach, and one bit of feedback is that the Ant script, if you're using Ant, isn't potentially the source of truth for what's actually running inside a broker. So what's running inside a broker might be configured by the administrator. It might be manually done as part of a manual deployment process, as some organizations don't have a mature deployment process, so that they're not using a script, so they might be doing something manually. Post-deployment, brokers may be tuned by operations for various reasons. And one of the other restrictions is that by introducing the analysis of XML files, it actually conflicts with other XML tools out there that people consistently use. So being able to, often developers aren't able to turn on the XML analysis rules within our plugin because they conflict with rules based on other plugins. So with that in mind, what we've done was we've extended on the logic of how the configuration for the runtime of the test coverage works, and so we've added in the ability to extract and import execution group information into our source code, or as part of us as an artifact in our source code, and include that in our analysis. So what that looks like from a technical point of view is, just going to the agenda, what it looks from a technical point of view is we'll have a bit of Java code that runs a task. In this case, we're just running a bit of Java. It's just a Java extract, and what that's producing is what we call a runtime XML. And this runtime XML is a proprietary format. It's fairly simple, fairly easy to reproduce. It's a proprietary format, and it basically says these are the execution groups I found within this for this broker. Within this execution group, these are the flows I found deployed, and these are the some additional properties on those flows. So it's a fairly simple XML document. What we'll be looking at is potentially merging with an additional XML document, and we'll talk about the way forward in a second. So what we do within our building of our project is we configure our properties to point to point to our coverage file. We also point to our runtime file. So this is a message broker plugin specific configuration called runtime file. And so during the analysis, whether or not you'll be able to see this here, which we'll just quickly run while the report runs. So during the analysis, it finishes pulling apart all the message broker code and the SQL code to analyze what the project is doing and analyze the source code, and takes that and couples that with the runtime information, the code coverage information. So what that ends up meaning is when we publish out to Sonar, our lovely test coverage tells us all about our what bits of ESQL have been covered and what haven't, and then within our generated diagram setting, or to the path where our generated diagram setting is telling us we want to put our file. In this case here, test coverage demos EG51E. We end up with our generated web page. Within our generated web page, we end up with this little summary here of our execution groups. And so what this is giving us from an applications developer's point of view is giving insight into how the code is deployed. So what we can see here is that we've got a bunch of flows. Some of the flows, for example, this flow here is deployed to 2 different execution groups. This TELS filter message flow is deployed to 2 different execution groups, and this particular flow here isn't deployed to any. So from the diagramming perspective, it gives us a bit of an idea of where all our components have been deployed to, and how many copies there are in different execution groups. When we look at our diagram, we can see here we can turn things off, turn things on, and turn things off. So we can see all the flows that are deployed to our first execution group, which is test filter 3 and backlog 2. And then we can also see all the flows deployed to, for example, our fifth execution group, which is one flow here, which is the same information here, but we're just seeing it maybe a slightly different. We'll just zoom out. We'll just see that. We'll just bring that up in Mozilla. Doesn't seem to be zooming out for us. It's maybe not big enough to zoom out. And that's what we see there. So we can see here that we've got different flows matching to different execution groups. Now, that's the current state of where our plugin is at the moment. So the point I'd like to make about this is also on a bit more of a grander scheme, or a bit more of a more functional approach. So this information in itself doesn't improve our code quality. It just gives us insight into, as I said, how it's deployed, and gives us developers a chance to possibly look at how this might perform. So going forward, what we can actually do is look to merge this information with, for example, the new security rules we're looking to develop for one of our clients, with the intention that the security rules will allow or try to enforce restrictions on which execution groups and which types of flows can be deployed into them. So going forward, what we'll be looking to do is part of the analysis of generate our diagrams to see that, for example, here is what a flow that's triggered by an incoming SOAP request. This particular queue here is this particular flow here is triggered by an incoming MQ message. So what we can look to do is build out rules that support our logic around this. So what we might decide is that from an architectural perspective, either for security or privacy or whatnot, we might want to restrict certain execution groups, or we try to suggest to the developer that we want to restrict certain execution groups to running certain types of flows. So input, say the file input and file output mode flows, we might want to restrict to an execution group that only has, or restrict the execution group to be one that is only running on a certain user, and that certain user has file restrictions, and no other execution group actually has ability to write to the file system. In this way, we can insulate our code and protect our code from any sort of security breaches, so that only the execution groups that need to perform particular services against the operating system have those heightened permissions. We can extend this to include rules around how we might address scalability. So we might decide that certain types of execution groups, for example, execution groups that respond to queues, all need to be multiply deployed. Or we might have restrictions on the number of flows that we anticipate any execution group might be able to handle. So if some developers have been, for example, just deploying to the same execution group, then we'll warn at an architectural level and give feedback back through Sonar to say that this particular pattern is to be avoided. But that's something that we'll be going forward in the next, hopefully the next one or two functional releases. So that's basically, we've gone through the agenda. So we're finishing a little bit early. So I'll just give everyone a second. So if there's no outstanding questions, I'll finish up. So hopefully everyone can get on with their morning and finish their coffee. Thank you for joining me for this presentation. And if you do have any questions or would like to see a demo, please feel free to reach out to us via our contact page. Via our contact page, or via the new online chat that we've got available. Again, thank you for joining us and enjoy your morning. Thank you.